Howdy, y'all. This week, during the Talking Town Ball podcast, we're going to go over a few scores and happenings around the state. Is there a Class B team being sent to the dog pound? We also have an interview with J.P. Daugherty of NSPN and local radio KRWC. And then we have the long-awaited return of the Minnesota Mount Rushmore. So, pull up a chair, grab a Bavarian cream donut with chocolate frosting, pour a tall glass of Sunny D, and get ready to talk town ball.
Under those stars where the heart beats strong, Minnesota diamonds where we all belong. Cheering voices carrying through the night, the soul of the state under stadium lights.
All right, it is Wednesday, May 7th on this episode of Talking Town Ball. But before we talk town ball, we got to get the howls out.
That was an unplanned howl.
That was a very unplanned
Maybe
howl.
have to put something in there in the post-show.
Post-show.
I'll work some magic, add
like
some sound
if
effects.
you listened last week for the our sign-off,
Yep.
we had a little Easter egg in there, so that was kind of fun. But
Yeah.
our Wolves, how about them? I mean, we know that there's probably a contingency of our listening crowd that probably really wants to just skip over this, but we are going to cover it because we love our Wolves.
Maybe we'll timestamp it. Maybe not. Maybe we'll force you to
We're
hear
gonna
us out
force
on the
you.
Wolves.
Actually, later on and in the middle, we'll just randomly talk Wolves too. So you're never going to dodge it. Wolves in 5, the Lakers, the media darlings, the Los Angeles Lakers go down.
Yeah, if you watched ESPN at all this week, I'm pretty positive the Wolves did not win, but the Lakers lost.
Lakers lost.
There's no coverage of the Wolves, but that's okay. That's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah,
We don't
exactly.
care.
Good, and hopefully we run into Golden State because it'll be the same exact story.
Yeah, by the
Same
time this
story.
comes out, I believe the first game
Will
for
have
the
been
next
played.
round will have been played. The Wolves will be 1-0. We'll still be howling. It could be Golden State. It could be the Houston Rockets.
Yep.
All I know is it doesn't matter because
Nas
we're-
Reed.
Who's
Nas
next?
Reed. 2 words. Nas Reed.
Who's next?
Also,
Nas Reed.
if you are on County Road 11 and County Road 90 between Loretto and Delano, and actually technically it would be Independence, there is just this huge plywood board leaned up against a power line, and it is spray painted Nas Reed.
That's it.
And that is
It's
perfect.
I mean, like you said, that I think the national broadcast, I don't know if it was Doris Burke or what, but she said, yeah, that just 2-word name has become like almost a greeting, like Roll Tide. And it has. So we're going to stick with it. Nas Reed all the way through the playoffs.
We'll let our audience here know the goal of this entire podcast is to one day get Nas Reed on. Whether it's to talk about town ball or not, we're gonna get him on.
That's
Two words.
that's our white whale that's out there that we'll one day hopefully bring on. But fun times as we get into the spring. Obviously the Wild let us down, but we still have our Wolves. So go Wolves! And
now we got to talk about, first of all, Clearwater.
Yeah?
notable scores. I mean, Ryan, do you want to give us kind of a breakdown of what we saw there?
Well, Clearwater, I don't know if that's game 3 or 4 of
Or
87.
13 of.
Clearwater plays a lot of games.
Lots of
We
games.
love Clearwater. They play a lot of games. We've
And-
mentioned it.
Town Ball Schedule guy, a great friend of the podcast, our first ever guest. We were pulling for you a little bit. We saw Hunter Malachek through 5 innings, carved up 9 River Cat batters, and they got the win. So don't take it too hard, but because probably by the time this airs, Clearwater will have played a couple
4 or
doubleheaders.
5 more
They'll
games.
4 or 5
redeem
more games.
themselves.
They'll redeem
They'll
themselves.
redeem themselves.
Brian, the town ball schedule guy, not only is he the town ball schedule guy, but schedules and helps schedule a ton of games for Clearwater. But we can't feel too bad for you because, as you know, being North Star League guys, Hunter's done it to us all. So
yeah,
sorry.
we know the feeling. So, and also just be aware the C ranking officials are keeping very close eye on every single one of your games. We all take every one of them into consideration. So
would have been a quad. Could have been a quad 2 win.
Quad
2 win.
Quad 2 win. That
would have been big. Yeah.
There's been a ton of other games played now that we're getting into May. Not that we're going to touch on every single one of them here, but we did want to shout you guys out, being you're the schedule guy. I do know that a lot of leagues now are getting into league play. You're seeing teams that have played 2, maybe 3 league games already, which we are in May now, so the season's rolling. So
when do you guys get rolling?
We play our first game on Friday, actually, the 9th, but our first league game
Litchfield
is lit. Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah. I would say that the league games really get started at the end of May for the North Star League. Usually people like to get a few, early non-leagues to get the bats going and the arms feeling up to snuff. So I think my first game is at Waverly Elementary, and that's not the first time you're going to hear about Waverly Elementary during this podcast.
Oh, wait, I thought you said your guys' first league game was you two against each other.
For them.
Oh. For Dassel Cokato, for the Saints, our first league game is against Litchfield.
Where's that at?
This is in Litchfield because
at Optimist Park.
Banner, is that going to unveil the state tournament banner?
Yeah, preseason banner.
No,
Hayes will be there.
You went state tournament last year. You got to have something that says when you went to state.
Participation.
No. You make the state tournament. You put something up at your ballpark.
Listen,
you made the state tournament.
You're talking to a guy that doesn't know anything about that. So maybe you need to just let me know what I need to do.
You got a sign guy in town?
No sign guys in town that I'm aware of.
I can set you up with a guy in Delano.
Okay,
get you
good.
A nice sign.
We've got
because I know. Well, Litchfield has a wonderful baseball history. They've made plenty of state tournaments, and John, you led the way to get them there last year. But there's nothing wrong with celebrating the state tournament.
We're always looking to enjoy the moment, and we'll do something special. Okay, we perfectly fine, Ryan. I was like I said, I was totally unaware, so I will make sure that the preparations are in place.
We are going to do our best to try to ruin your day.
That's totally fine. That's totally fine. I understand it. It's it'll be a battle. So for DC to come to us, and later in the year we go to DC, and that's that big Darwin night. So
it's
we're excited for the home and away there. But like I said, we're opening up in Waverly in late May, and it's going to be a different year. It's going to be fun, but we only have 10 games that really affect our standing for the regions, which is, some years we've had 22 games to decide that. So every C game for us in the North Star is a very important game. So it'll be a heck of a year. All right. So we've covered our score that we wanted to go over. We've covered our opening games. I want to ask, what else did we want to get in? Oh, here's where we are.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if anyone's been watching that waiver wire on the NBA site, but there was a name that came through. I don't know, maybe a week ago, but a Delano signee, and there's been plenty of them. Boy, I'll tell you what, there's been a lot of names, and I think there's maybe, talks of a super team even have come up. I don't know, Ryan.
The decision for LeBron next year, I heard.
Yeah, going to South Beach, which is, technically Delano. We saw a name, Zach Muckenhern, who I've only known Zach. I didn't follow him through high school. I was kind of not in the loop when he came through. I think he was a 2013 grad of Delano. Yep. So when he came through high school, obviously a pretty stellar athlete and pitcher for the Delano Tigers. He went. Where did he go to school?
He went to University of North Dakota.
UND. Okay, so out of UND, he goes and he gets drafted. Correct. Okay. Now, did he originally get drafted by the Orioles?
Yes.
Okay. So, kind of a fun connection there. I went. I was down in the spring training for the Orioles in 2020, literally a week before the COVID outbreak. And I was down there to see another friend who was pitching for the Orioles, and warming up right in front of me is Zach Muckenhern. And I'm like, I know this name. I've seen this guy before. And I sent, I think, you guys a picture of Zach warming up on a field down in Sarasota. Kind of a cool thing there, but it led to Zach. Did he jump around a little bit? I didn't know he ended up with the Mets.
So he didn't really jump around early on. He was with the Orioles organization for quite a while. Then he ended up with the White Sox and then with the Mets the following year. And then, it was 2 years ago he made his MLB debut. I think it was actually in Detroit, but throwing for the Mets.
Man.
I think Scherzer started the game.
I was watching this game.
Yep, so he did. I think he threw a 2 or 3 different occasions for them. Ended up getting traded to the Mariners, was with their minor league team. And then the last year or two, I'm not super familiar with Mexico's professional baseball season, but he was playing in Mexico. And
If you have MLB TV, they do carry those games. So I watched him start. I think is it Lacey? Is that who he was playing with, or something like that?
Starts with an L.
I don't know
That's
if
close.
I'm getting the pronunciation wrong. Sorry,
Yep.
or the team in general wrong. Sorry, but I did watch him throw on MLB TV, and he was awesome. Like he was cutting some dudes. Got a bunch of guys playing in that league that they've all had their time in Major League Baseball, or they're between teams, kind of like Zach has been for a time or two. But it's cool stuff.
But if you don't know Zach, obviously a pretty talented left-handed pitcher, and he had a decision to make. I think this spring was kind of what was the next step in his life, or if he was looking to maybe continue that baseball dream,
Yep. Yeah, it sounds like the team in Mexico has said, you're welcome back. We'd love to have you back. And he got married a couple years ago, and wife and all his family are still in Delano. So I was just kind of like, oh. And again, he hasn't played a game with us yet. He could very well leave in a month or 2 days. Again, nothing is set in stone. He could be like, I don't want to play with you bums. He's not really like that at all. He's really good friends with some of our players and has been for a long time.
To reiterate, this is a Delano grad guy. Like
I think he technically lives closer to the ball field than anybody else.
Really?
So,
there you go.
Unbelievable.
He can walk there. He was a kind of a cool story because in high school, he didn't get a ton of big schools looking at him. Because I think he was, maybe 5'9" or 10 lefty, threw mid 80s, which is fast.
Yes.
And so went up to UND. He's a really smart guy, engineering guy, and he came back after like a year or two, and he was about 6'2", and just all of a sudden, and he grew. And kind of like how Joe Mauer did after the Twins drafted him, like when he was 20 years old, and then he started hammering the weights.
Right.
His junior year, he throws a shutout at USC. They fly back home. They have a Monday morning meeting, and they said the baseball program doesn't exist anymore.
Oh, no way.
By Tuesday afternoon, he had every school in the SEC calling him
Oh, my God.
to transfer.
crazy.
And then he made the decision to put his name in the draft, and the Orioles grabbed him in the 11th round.
Wow.
So, yeah.
What a story.
It is,
I mean, it's
so.
and it's still going. I mean, his baseball career is far from over. I mean, it sounds like he wants to be active, in whatever capacity, whatever level that is. And if it means town ball, I mean, he's just going to go out and enjoy it and stay active. And who knows, maybe this year he stays back, and maybe he does something else next year. It's
And again, he's one of us, and we call his grandpa Frank the Godfather in town. So I think there's something to be said about that.
For sure.
Going to play in front of the parents and the grandparents.
Oh,
and everybody,
absolutely.
so.
I've noticed that too. If there's a motivating factor as a guy ages, obviously if you're in your lower 20s, you probably have your eyes set, your priorities a little different, but you get to that point, I think being close to family, settling, having some stability in your in the life of, because some of these minor league guys, if the Concordia's baseball head coach Chris Coast, and I don't know if he still coaches.
Nope, he's not up at Moorhead. Nope.
Right.
He was for.
He was.
Yep.
He was. But he came out with a book where he I think he was like a 33-year-old rookie.
Yeah.
When he came out and played for the Phillies in 06, he was 33 years old.
Yeah.
He had just broke through.
He and won a ring with them, and
right away.
started a World Series game. I think at DH. I want to say
he caught, and I think later on in that series, but was actually a big factor in the series. And you look at a guy like that, he got beat down in the minors. They're making changes and improvements to minor league baseball and paying guys better, and you're not laying on floors and sleeping at random houses.
12 to a one-bedroom apartment.
Yeah. So,
well, the cool connection with Town Ball to Chris Coast, a longtime Moorhead Brewer.
Yep.
So like Zach with Delano, like Chris Coast with Moorhead Brewers, there's a lot of guys. Well, and Corey Koski with Loretto.
Yeah.
There's a lot of former Major League Baseball players who they're either done with their professional career or they're in between. And they come out and contribute to Town Ball, and that's pretty cool.
You don't often see a guy that's considered in his prime to have the opportunity to pitch, for a team. So this is where maybe that would come into play.
Yeah, as a left-handed
more of these
batter
aging guys.
myself, I'd be terrified.
Oh my God!
But no longer in the North Star League. So
you mentioned
worry
he hung out with you maybe right before a state run one year, Ryan, and he threw against some of your guys, some of your better hitters, and they were looking a little bit childish.
Oh,
out
yeah.
there. So
Yeah.
no,
this
he's
was
got
like
some stuff.
Middle of his. Did he just?
Well, so
he just
during-
left the Orioles at the time, or
No, I think this is also goes back to the COVID year that we bring up because there
Oh,
was
yeah.
no minor league
That's
season.
right.
Yep.
And we tried to get the Orioles to just okay him to pitch for us.
Right.
And they're just like, nope, but you just got to stay ready in case we start playing
So
ball.
throw some
and he
live
goes,
pens.
I can stay ready by throwing in a baseball game where they keep score against batters.
Yeah.
And they're like, nope, but just stay ready. Though. And we're just like, come on.
Bullpens.
And I know that the payroll in Delano, I mean, you guys you're way
Comparable.
up there paying all your players or whatever, but you probably can't match what the Orioles were paying him at the time. So
Not quite.
Not quite.
well,
No.
I think that there's a lot of scenarios like this around the state, and we follow the waiver wire on the NBA website as close as we can. But if you have a story or word on a professional player who's maybe coming back to play town ball, give us a heads up so we can talk about them too.
It's hard to sneak those guys by you, though. I mean, it really
Yeah.
is. We're normally pretty well aware. It was almost, I think it was a local guy that broke. It was almost like breaking news for the area. So, exciting stuff. If he does stick with you, that would be appointment baseball. I would do my best to try to find a start and go watch that young fella throw. So,
Yeah.
all right. I think a lot of the listeners that have tuned in to this episode are interested in our take, and not only just like our take, just trying to get an understanding and information as far as we can on this Buffalo situation, right? I mean, you teased that there might be that there might be chasing a B class dog to the pound here.
Yeah, trying to lighten the mood a little bit.
Yeah, we do our best to lighten the mood, but Buffalo kind of hit with the state board hammer recently, and Jordan, I don't know if you want to get into this, and as far as like what happened and now where do we go?
Yeah, so I will give you the most clear information and true, I guess, maybe, I don't know if that's the right word, but the best information that we have, not just, whatever you hear and see on Twitter.
Right. We've got our sources. Obviously, we're North Star guys. We're definitely in the loop. We were in our last meeting this last week at the North Star League meeting. We were kind of, I don't know what you'd call it. We were given as much info as the guys from Buffalo had at the time.
Yeah, and if you've been a listener since we've started, we've had NBA board members on the podcast as well. So we talk with them fairly frequently. We kind of get perspectives from all sides on any of these topics, but couple things we want to clarify just to make the situation a little more clear for you. So the Buffalo Bulldogs of the North Star League, they were a Class C team last year. They were moved to Class B with the new point thresholds. They recently have been moved from Class B to Class A. Now, this was the result of some, I don't know if I want to say roster issues, but this is a result of the roster they have and players on their roster and the point totals for said players. The point total they have now with their players would qualify them as a Class A team. Now, we've seen a ton of stuff on Twitter, and as you know, everything on Twitter is true all the time.
100%.
So take everything seriously. So something I want to clear up on Buffalo, because I know this question has been asked. You talk about point totals for players. There is two different ways that a team can structure their roster for a base total of points.
Right.
One being your city population, one being your school district and that population. I've seen out there people talking about the players on the Bulldogs and how, they're Buffalo grads or whatever. That doesn't necessarily matter in this situation because Buffalo, they use their city population for their point total.
Right.
They, like we said, are over that point total now and have been moved to A. However, this is it feels like sort of a fluid situation. In talking with some state board members, some Buffalo guys, it seems like they are going to eventually meet the two groups. They're going to try to find some sort of resolution. Both groups will have representatives, and they'll go from there. I think that kind of covers the situation at a very base level.
Yeah. What I would say to add on to that, ultimately the foundation of the issue at hand is that Buffalo had chosen their city boundaries as their population point, and that's what applies to your team points.
Yep.
And the players that they had that were in question were Buffalo addresses, Buffalo guys that lived in town. I mean, I want to say in town. When I say in town, it's like they're right there.
Yep.
When we talk a difference of a city to a township, a guy across the street doesn't, land within that city boundary.
So we bring this up because a few of players in question on this roster, although their addresses say Buffalo, Minnesota, are technically in what would be Buffalo Township. Now, all across the state, you have, like we have the city of Dassel, there's also Dassel Township. There's the city of Cokato, and then there's the Cokato Township. There's Stockholm. There's all these little townships that surround a town, but they're also, if you have a mailing address, it's probably just Buffalo or it's probably just Dassel. Or
right,
whatever.
and I think it's more prominent too in the rural communities. I think if you get closer to the cities, there's not a lot of townships. I mean, it's literally city limits, right?
Yep. Yeah.
So it's surprising because you obviously like the suburbs, these towns that are commuter communities, you don't look them as towns. You'd assume that they would fall under that city category, but obviously with Buffalo's situation, that isn't the case.
Right.
And
we've had, so to be pretty transparent about it, we've had conversations with with people from Buffalo, with people involved with that team, because we are in the same league with them, and we talk to them at league meetings, and we're friends with those guys.
Yeah.
We just had one of their players on our podcast, but I do know this. They are not looking to try to seem like they're a victim in any way, shape, or form here. They do want to make that clear on the situation. while we do know they're not happy with the decision on being moved to Class A, they're not going to play the victim card here. They're cooperating as best they can with the situation, and they're not looking for pity.
No.
But what they are looking for is clarification on some of these rules, just to make sure that, not only will things be clear for them, but clear for every team in the state under the NBA.
Yeah, immediately. I think anytime something comes down on a team like this, you're hoping that you're not being targeted for any reason. This is where it led my initial response when I heard about this, and to give you more context to the situation, Buffalo was reported by a source 2 days, maybe a day after the purge was due. Okay, when we say the purge of points, it was your ability to cut a player to not jump up a class in the next year, I want to say.
Right. They touch on that. So if you want to, we won't read the whole thing off, but the Buffalo Bulldogs did release a statement on Twitter, and if you want to go check it out, you can. They do touch on this.
They do. And like we said, they were reported about a day after this final purge point, and what that says to me is that there may have been some sort of motivation from the source to put Buffalo in a spot where they couldn't make a change. They weren't being told 3 weeks prior and then they could make their change, correct? I mean, they were being notified to the state board as a way for them to get into hot water and ultimately push them to A. So that was my immediate reaction. I was disgusted when I heard that. I mean, yes, if your team has an issue with a roster or an address and player points aren't being correctly counted, it needs to be addressed. But the fact that it came across the way that it did, somewhere out there is someone who submitted this to the state board, and then the state board dug into it. The question is every team getting this same treatment? I mean, that's where I think Buffalo, you lead into their questioning after the fact. Okay, why are we the ones that seem to be targeted? Right. Whereas there's an entire state of ball. Is every team being audited right now?
Yeah, I think that's a fair question to ask, and honestly, we don't know. We're not on the state board.
No,
so we don't make these decisions.
No, we do not.
Or we don't perform these audits or anything, and we don't necessarily know exactly how they work. And I think that's part of what Buffalo is probably trying to figure out too. Like, how does this all work? I think that's a fair question.
Buffalo made it known that they were pretty upset because there was an announcement from the board last fall. Can you go over what was announced by the board as far as the actions they were making in the fall to make sure teams were having their points applied correctly?
So I think, and I don't know exactly what, word for word what the announcement was, but basically it was, we are changing things up. We're going back to the 3 classes. We have the different point totals and thresholds, so we need to cover rosters, basically audit them, see where people line up, so we know who's in what class, which that's, I don't envy that job at all.
No.
But they created that job.
They did.
Correct.
They took that on by creating that system.
So that's kind of where we're at now this work was done, but the Buffalo news and that move is being done very recently, which it comes off a little weird because it's like, well, were they not covered during that big audit or whatever it was? And if they were, how do certain things get missed if they get missed? Because these players, these Buffalo players who have Buffalo addresses but are technically in Buffalo Township. These aren't guys who they just went out and signed today. These are guys who have been on the roster for a little while now. And like we said, we talk with those guys. They're in our league. We've had conversations. I don't think that they were even aware that they were doing anything wrong, and I know that wasn't their intent at all. Whether they are and I know that they're not above accepting any responsibility here, because cut and dry, yes, rules are rules, and I think that it is great to have a rule handbook in place, because otherwise it is the Wild West.
Right.
But sometimes rules need a little more clarification. And I think that's kind of the goal here, maybe on all sides.
You know, I'm trying to, I want to try to find like an analogy that would work, because I think from Buffalo's perspective is they said, basically, okay, Buffalo, you've been a part of this audit. We've looked things over. Buffalo trusted in the process. You know, they're being told by the state board, we're doing a statewide audit. Every team's a part of this. We want to make sure every correct point total is applied. Well, then down the road, when it's a day or two beyond the point of no return, all of a sudden, hey, Buffalo, your points are being audited, and we found a problem.
Yeah.
You know?
And that's tough. That would be tough for any team to have to deal with, regardless of what class you're in, or how close you are on those point totals. So I can just give you personal experience with roster stuff. For Dassel-Cokato, we use our school district. So the whole township deal, and is that part of the city? Is it not part of the city? Do we need to clear that up? Doesn't necessarily matter for us, because we just go. No. And you guys too use school district in Litchfield.
Yep, same.
So Ryan, in Delano, do you use school district or do you use a?
We use city. School district goes into like Independence
St.
and technically like Loretto.
Oh, okay.
Here we go.
Oh boy.
Here we go.
Well, and that's a great point to make too, because in Buffalo's case, for them to use city population is the right move.
Yeah,
because we did some digging on what their school district is, or the limits of that, and the point totals it would be.
It's ISD, I believe 885, and I'll tell you this: it runs from
that's St. Paul. That would have been the best.
Exactly. No, it runs just north of Watertown Mayor to just east of Maple Lake to just south of Monticello to just west of Osseo. I mean, you're talking huge population.
So this is something that every team, and I think, when all is said and done with whatever happens with this Buffalo situation, there's something to be said here and a lesson to be learned for all teams. If you're using your population or your school district, be in the know of what you're doing, because if you have a school district that stretches forever, use your city population. Or if you have a big city population but the school district is less points, go with that for the betterment of your team. And in Buffalo's case, we know that their school district stretches forever, and that's why I would assume why they choose city population. But their roster also consists of nearly all Buffalo grads.
I mean, we've been told multiple times the 95% of the roster is within 5 miles of the park. So I know that it can be tricky then what do you use? And for Buffalo, they felt that was the right thing to use, but I think maybe it's just a little unclear then on what constitutes as city. Is Buffalo Township does not count as Buffalo City, but maybe the way rules are written, do they need to be clarified? And I think that when all is said and done, like I said, there's a lot to be learned here, but hopefully for the betterment of the NBA and all of town ball across the state, these type of situations can be hashed out in, I guess a clear amount of time, so teams aren't stuck like this or whatever it may be.
Especially with Buffalo, they haven't signed anybody really in this off season.
Yeah, they're
no new
signings.
Zero.
At our last state board, or at our last league meeting. We kind of did a little round table. Who's got new signings? Who's got whatever? And Buffalo, no new signings.
Same roster.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm kind of hung up on the timing of it. I think that there was some hijinks, some malice involved with that, and I think the state board should see through that, and I think that the motivation behind them being reported was to absolutely screw them up for at least a year, and that's what frustrates me. And I think the state board needs to look at the big picture here. I mean, if you're going to adjust Buffalo, well, you're going to fully disrupt a B district. That's going to be that.
Right.
Is it 6B?
District
And now you're putting Buffalo, forcing them into a region where,
And
boy,
we
are
don't-
they going to be going into the Moorhead-Hibbing region? I mean, that's my
yeah.
question.
So the guess would be Buffalo would probably be in the district with the two Moorhead teams, Monticello, Sartell, Elk River, Bemidji, and Wilmer, the Wilmer Rails. That would be the guess. So
Sure.
That's where
the
I start-
hodgepodge one.
yeah,
with
that's where
nearly
I
everybody.
start to get a little fired up, and I've brought it up on this podcast, and I've said it to many people. We were at state board meetings for a couple different years, and I was asked point blank in the middle of a meeting by a state board member when they were discussing this, how I felt, Delano, you'd probably be in Class B. And I'm like, well, that's fine, and I've been very open that I don't see it as us getting bumped up. That's where we land. That's fine. That's where we were for a long time anyway, up until about 2010. And I said, this is fine, but you got to be careful when you start messing with the leagues. They have messed with the leagues. We have leagues that have teams in all three classes now, first time ever. What does that do to rivalries? And Gary Schlepper brought it up last week. Yeah, we're kind of now looking at it, realizing how this does affect some teams. You have St. Martin, the lone B team in Stearns County.
Yep.
You get a matchup between them and a Lake Henry, and well, it kind of. I mean, and this is that kind of my a bigger topic of league versus non-league. But if St. Martin's playing Hutchinson on Sunday and they're playing Lake Henry on Friday, you're gonna save your big arm for Hutchinson, who's not even in your league, and you're gonna go down. And if Hutch even plays them, I don't know.
Right.
I think you're seeing a lot of these districts, regions, and sections that are mixed up with 2 to 3 leagues. You're going to see a lot of them that aren't going to be playing each other. I saw a couple schedule drops by North Star League B teams. They're playing the North Star League teams, and pretty much that's it.
Yeah.
Yep.
So now we're going to have, what are we going to have, the high school QRF system to do rankings?
God, I hope not.
Well, I mean, how are you going to figure it out? You're going to have to
Right.
do it seating. You're going to have to do voting, and people hate that.
Yeah, it's not fun.
Yeah.
And again, Buffalo, Final Four team in C last year, won the North Star League, won the region. Maple Lake, and we talked about Maple Lake earlier with Hunter Malachek. Hunter Malachek is not going to throw against Buffalo this year. You just made
No.
that game, Maple Lake against Buffalo, as
4 or 5 starters.
Right, whereas they would have both been in the same. Oh my gosh, there's region sections. Give me what
You're
B
fine.
is.
districts.
They would have been in District 6B together, where now you get a Sefker Malachek matchup that's maybe really.
gone.
That's
but now,
huge.
But now for both teams, you throw someone else.
You throw someone else, and it's up to each team to kind of condition their players and condition their town and fans and
Right.
create the culture that every game's important, but it is hard to do when this is a huge matchup.
Yeah.
You go to Maple Lake and they're gonna they're not gonna throw Malachek.
Well,
so are the
and-
people in Maple Lake gonna come out in groves like they do? I don't know.
Right.
If there's beer, probably.
Yeah, but there's beer at the V.
That's right. That's right.
Well, and in Buffalo's case, to my knowledge, they're just playing their same league schedule
Yep.
that they would have anyway. There's no time to do
back
any
now.
other league.
Yeah, you
or
wonder.
whatever.
They're going to play, I think, 3 Class A teams during the entire year in the regular season. And what do they just, you throw them into a region and just say you're the lowest seed? I wouldn't want to. I wouldn't want to be a 1 seed out of some Class A or
And Ryan, maybe you maybe remember this too. In the North Star League a long time back, Hamel, not the same Hamel team. I mean, Hamel Hawks, yeah, but not the same Hamel
roster.
They would, not the same roster. They would just be the automatic low seed when it came to the region tournament, and that team was just, I don't know, the Gophers that spring or whoever. A pretty good, talented team.
They were good enough.
And Buffalo being, and we don't know what's going to happen with wherever they're placed, but if they just decide, well, you're the lowest seed, the number 1 team, well, Buffalo's no pushover. Regardless of what class they're in.
Have fun with that lineup.
It just disrupts everything, and it makes an A section, jumbled, and then you leave in the scraps of. I mean, Buffalo was a heavy favorite to come out of 6B, and now does 6B hold their 3 state bids and now you find 4?
Yeah,
4.
We're gonna get 4.
So it gets that's made up of 2 different leagues, and it gets messy here. But I think that Ryan's got a point to make here.
And going back to my rant last week, you just took out a team that has a good chunk of success points from last year, and then
what does that do to your bids the
what
following year?
does that do to your bids?
Yeah,
I know.
It is a.
Or this year.
I think a point to make is this is I would call it a transition year because it's a new system or a new classification. There's kinks to work out, and I think that everyone's going to want to do that on either party here, which Buffalo, they're looking for clarification on things. The state board, I know this might come off like we're ragging them a little bit, and they definitely have things to work on, just like anyone else does. But they're going to try to work on this situation too. They're not taking it lightly. I think everyone involved needs to, not to get all kumbaya here or whatever, but everyone involved needs to get together and figure out a resolution to this for the betterment of the state of Minnesota amateur baseball.
I think for a decision this big, and like you talk about, like, well, is everything case by case? I think for something this big, it definitely needs to be its own decision, and I think the state board needs to make almost a vote on it because there are variables here, and you have the opportunity to. Buffalo was quick to fix their roster to make sure that by next year they were going to get back to B. They immediately made changes. So the fact that they were a day and a half late to be notified beyond the purge point,
that's tough.
That's a variable that I think the state board needs to look at. Was the state board notified by some burner account that they can't verify?
Right. And full disclosure here, we sometimes get DMs from burners of news before it happens, and we think, God, these guys are on the ball. How do they get this info?
Right.
On the topic of Twitter, when you are on Twitter talking about town ball, talking about teams making assumptions or accusations, maybe think twice before you do. Unless you're a burner, then go for it. Whatever, it's funny. But like any true media source out there, get the proper correct info before you just start throwing stuff out there, because then it only makes things muddier, not only for a team like Buffalo but for the board as well. And now everybody's saying, well, I heard this. It doesn't help the situation.
The tricky part is moving forward is if they continue doing it the way they're doing and moving teams will move quite a bit. At what point do the leagues just disappear?
Yeah, and we don't want that.
You don't want that. But why? Buffalo, if they're in the district we think they're going to be in, why aren't you getting together with those teams and making sure those games
maybe
are
this
a priority?
turns into like a college football situation where there used to be a million different conferences and now there's like 4.
Yeah,
and then you just go from there. But.
No, I think I don't have. It's just this little opinion here, but if I was on the state board, I'd want to hear out every bit of information. I'd want to vote on a decision whether or not that. I like to use the phrase like you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, because you have an issue, you fixed it, you notified the team before the season started. There was no on Buffalo's side, there was no clear, wrongdoing, like intentional.
Right.
You have to take that into consideration. You have to consider your B district that you're absolutely going to shake, and then you have to consider this A section that no one wants this team to join,
right?
Because it's another team that potentially could steal a bid. So
yeah,
you're pissing everybody off.
It affects, it doesn't just affect Buffalo,
and it affects rivalries in the regular season. I mean, you're literally you're not helping anyone at any point here. Right. I think if I had the opportunity to look at all the facts that I have right now, I would 100% want to keep things where they were. I have no skin in the game. I don't care if Buffalo goes to A or D or F or G. I don't care what league they're in, but you start looking at all the facts, and it's like you want to defend someone and a team that does things right. And I think they do things right. They just had a minor trip up, a little hurdle, which
they maybe weren't aware of.
Right. No, they absolutely were not.
And again, like they've said, we're not trying to be a victim here. And if they had any, wrongdoing, intentional or not, they'll wear it. It's fine. But the question is, well, are we taking things case by case then? And if so, how does that look?
Right.
I think that, it's kind of a mess. It's kind of a mess for everybody, and we're hoping it gets resolved one way or the other.
I feel like there's not going to be any change. They're going to stick with their decision. The state board has been known to be pretty straightforward with things like that. So. It's frustrating for Buffalo and their fans and the people that wanted to go see, like you said, even like the Maple Lake fans that wanted to see a heck of a matchup. You're taking that away from them too. So if Buffalo next year coming back to be, I mean that's
right. I would assume that they make the roster change or whatever it is they need to do, and then they're back where they were. But who knows?
The other point that we don't want to ignore is, and we've talked about this a little bit, and we've got some messages about it right when we started this podcast about, if teams would get, weren't getting so many players outside of this or that, and we used Hibbing as a good example, because it's like, where do the people outside of Hibbing go play for?
They control their roster.
They can, but you can control your roster, but it's like, hey, we can't take you on. And again, you can use the school district, and that's all well and good. And it's hard. You got to reestablish. But if you're going to be bouncing from A to B to A to B to B to C and bouncing around from district to district, it is hard to make a culture of and get people up for these games and get people playing.
Yep.
But you're telling people from not Buffalo, or from Buffalo or Buffalo Township, sorry, you can't play with us.
Right.
Oh, is Loretto going to grab them? Because now they cost Loretto points. Is Rockford going to grab them? They cost Rockford points.
Yeah.
Well, you need the state board, the TJ Eichelberg all-seeing eye. Your job is to grow the game, and if there's a situation where you have to tell people no to playing baseball, we're not growing the game.
No,
and it's you're totally right. And Buffalo, they don't want to bounce around. Whether they are an A, B, or C, they don't want to have to be in a different class every year. And we've mentioned you do get to control your roster. You sign the guys. You know what the points they're worth. But that's where the clarification comes into play. And I think that Buffalo definitely wants clarification on these rules so they can figure out where did we slip up? Where did it go wrong? Why weren't we made aware? Whatever. And not only them, the state board wants to make things clear too. I would think that if they have a handbook of rules, they want them to be clear. I would think anyway.
Yeah.
And they want to make sure that teams know exactly what these rules mean, because then they can keep things stable too, where there aren't teams bouncing around all the time. So, yeah, I don't know.
Boy, we could go for a while on this. I think that it definitely fired us up. I put myself in Corey Braun's shoes, the manager of Buffalo, and I kind of I'm kind of a little sick to my stomach, because I know that he does everything to the best of his ability to put a great team together. And if you listen to our interview with Johnny Early, you know, that roster respects the heck out of that guy, and he does things the right way, and now he has to walk around thinking he did something horribly wrong that is like slightly derailing his program.
And I think too, and we've mentioned this point multiple times, but the self-policing you have to do as a team and your roster. Maybe there's I'm not going to make any accusations, but maybe there's teams out there in the state that they do play dirty. They are trying to, skirt the rules. I don't think Buffalo's one that's trying, not at all.
No.
So whatever happens, I mean, we'll keep everybody posted to the best of our ability, but we're also not just going to throw whatever out there.
Yeah, I mean, you're probably going to see there will be more, the breaking news on Twitter. I know that it was big when it dropped, and I think people have the right to be interested and keep up to date on it. It's still fluid and fluid situation. So
right.
I think we've beaten the horse pretty good here, and
it's definitely not the last you'll hear about it, I'm sure, from all over the state, but we've said enough for now.
Yeah, I think.
But I think on the topic of Buffalo, that's maybe
What
a
a
good
segue.
segue into our next.
Yeah, well, Jordan, what about Buffalo?
Here's what about Buffalo. We've got a Buffalo guy for our interview today, JP Daugherty. He works with NSPN. They do the broadcast for the state tournament and a ton of high school sports. He's also on local radio with KRWC. JP Daugherty is our interview today. Here's JP.
All right, and we are back, and our interview today is JP Daugherty, and JP has been doing a lot of state tournament games in recent years through NSPN, calling games on NSPN all the way back to 2020 during the COVID year when the state board partnered up with them. He's also done quite a bit of radio work for Wright County's KRWC 1360, but just talking to JP before the show, it sounds like he's done a lot more work with NSPN this year. So JP, welcome to the show. And if you kind of want to give us a little rundown of what you've been doing here this last year, what sports you've been covering for NSPN, and then we'll get into town ball talk too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've been doing pretty much anything in the last year. I've done, volleyball in the fall. I've done football, soccer, and then in the winter, basketball, hockey, and then in the spring here, baseball, softball, and then lacrosse as well. So
Wow.
I've been getting my money's worth. So
That's
yeah,
good.
most certainly.
Good to hear. So, I had mentioned in the intro part, 2020 was the first year NSPN partnered with the state tournament. Were you doing? You're a pretty young guy, but were you doing games back in 2020, or when did you start doing the state tournament games on NSPN?
So I started back in 2023. So I've done the state tournament for a couple of years now. I started out. We'll talk more about this later, but I started out with KRWC in 2021 doing high school stuff, and then they wanted me to do town ball as well. So that's how I got into the town ball stuff. But then when I started working for NSPN, they were like, "Hey, you have town ball experience with KRWC, so we'll have you do some of the state tournament games." And it's just been a great experience to do those for the last few years.
Well, that's great, and you are fabulous on both calls, whether that be the radio or doing the streaming broadcast. You are definitely
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Favorite of this podcast.
We're pro JP podcast.
We are very pro JP.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
So
Certain people are not pro JP.
That's okay. That's
You
okay.
know, unfortunate. I don't want to drop any names here, but
we were not going to drag
there-
anybody.
there's reasons that I don't work for KRWC all that much anymore, and this is not Joe Carlson's fault. This is not Jamie Broman's fault. You can probably deduce who I'm talking about.
Well,
here,
yeah.
But you know
yeah,
what though, you can do so many different things, JP. So I
Yes.
you know, I'm not saying they would ever hold you back, but you're doing exactly what you should be doing at your age and getting out and doing
Yeah.
all kinds of different sports and at all type of different levels. So no, you're taking the right steps in our opinion.
I appreciate that, guys.
What's been the favorite ballpark though that you have been to so far? And you can take out Litchfield, Dassel, and Delano because we know those
all
are
right.
1A, 1B, and 1C.
To be honest with you, I love all three of your ballparks. I'm gonna have to go. I mean, yeah, they would be 1A, 1B, and 1C, but
Appreciate that.
you know, I gotta give Delano the 1A, Dassel would be the 1B, and Litchfield the 1C.
Yeah,
no,
we're always the little brother.
offense to any of there, but besides you three, I love the Mini Met in Jordan.
Yeah.
Getting to do games there last year during the state tournament was great. I've also done high school baseball state tournament there, where they have the quarters and semis at the Mini Met before they go to Target Field. But that was a great experience last year going out of the Mini Met. That's probably my favorite town ballpark, other than you guys.
Did you get to all three parks during the state tournament last year? So Jordan, Belle Plaine, and Green Isle?
So I was in Jordan. I was also in Belle Plaine. I did the Class B championship game in Belle Plaine. So that was super
Nice.
cool. An awesome experience to get to do that. I didn't get to go out to Green Isle, but I was in Shakopee for the first weekend for Class B. So I got to 3 out of the 4 parks.
Nice.
When NSPN is covering the state tournament, how many play-by-play broadcasters are being put out? Is it just one per site?
So usually, yeah, there's primarily just one per site, but I mean, it all depends on people's availability. I think we had a total of anywhere between 6 and 8 play-by-play guys last year for the state tournament. I just got lucky enough they wanted to choose me for the Class B championship game because they had me at different sites throughout the tournament. I was in Jordan for a week. I was in Belle Plaine, obviously, for the last week, and then I was in Shakopee the first week. So,
How many games a day do you do? Like every game at that site that day, or half?
yeah.
Of them, or?
So usually, they'll have you do every game at that site
wow.
during the day, and 4 games can get kind of exhausting. It's a
For
good
anybody.
time for one of those town ball beers afterwards. You definitely need 1 or 2 of those after a long 4-game day. But I mean, it's so much fun to get to be able to do, an entire day and look at, each team. You get to look at 8 different teams, and
Right.
I think it's more fun that way than just to do one game and then you get to look at your 2 teams and then you're done, and you get paid, obviously.
Right. It keeps it fresh, and yeah, you're right. That beer after the 4 games is well deserved.
Yeah.
You also not just broadcasting the games for the state tournament, but the selection show that the NBA State Board does. You were a part of that production crew. You got to.
Yes.
You were with NSPN for that. Tell us about your experience with that and what that's like doing not a live game necessarily, but a different type of live show.
Yeah.
But
so
don't disclose the location.
The hidden
Oh yeah,
location.
it's secret location, so don't say.
Yes, right. At the secret location of the NBA selection show, where it is all done in conclave style. We might as well have the white smoke come out. Like, oh, we have selected our teams from our secret location. But
Very topical of you.
To be able to be part of that production, to do things like almost live TV in a way, it's a different experience for sure because you get because everything is so like down to the second, honestly. And you want to make sure you have a good product for the people that are watching, the show on the stream. I know we had kind of a couple of technical difficulties and errors, the last couple of years, but it's all about, working the kinks out and giving the best experience possible for the fans. Because I know we've tried to balance giving, you guys your time. I know Jordan and Ryan and maybe John too have had all the experiences, being on that selection show and getting to talk about the teams. But the most important thing is to be able to get all the teams, get where they're playing, and then, you can have your fun and talk about predictions and stuff afterwards. But we've tried the best we could do to, get everything going in a free-flowing style and just making sure that there's no technical difficulties. But we've been trying to deal with that the past couple of years, but I think overall we've done a pretty good job.
Absolutely. JP, I will say this. I think the analysts on that show and the state board members that are featured, they're not going to be winning any Emmys anytime soon. So I don't think they're helping you in any way. I think the fact that you can dress them up and make them look presentable and put out a good product is pretty impressive. I always laugh when the first shot cuts to President Forsman and he just looks like a deer in the headlights almost. And it's a good night. Everyone's obviously excited on that night. So to be able to provide just kind of a source, you're going live on YouTube, you're going live everywhere else. Boy, it really adds to the excitement, and I think it's really progressed over the last few years. It's a fun event for sure.
Yeah, the last 2 years I've gotten to be a part of it. It's been super fun, and I got to give a shout out to my guy at NSPN, Andy Price, who leads the whole thing. Without him, that wouldn't be possible. I'm just one of the grunt workers.
The grunts.
Without Andy, that whole thing would be possible.
Andy's a great guy and very organized. I remember getting emails directly from Andy about, where should we set up at your park for the state tournament? Where would be good vantage points to stream from? He seems like a good leader for you guys over there.
For context, is Andy the host of that would do the weekend recaps, or is that
no?
Ryan,
that's Ryan
right.
Phelps, another guy who he's the host guy that's actually on in front of the camera during the selection show from NSPN.
Okay,
that's Ryan Phelps.
Gotcha.
So speaking of grunt work, the one thing I've appreciated about the games on NSPN during the state tournament, you're doing 4 in one day. You all seem to do a really good job knowing a little bit about the players, where they went to college. I know you have the programs in front of you, but sometimes I've heard rattling off some statistics, and you're talking about team. I mean, how much time are you you got 8 teams to cover in just one day. I mean, how much time are you putting into doing a little recon on all these teams?
Usually I take about an hour for each game to prep, regardless of whether it's a high school game or a town ball game. But usually it's about an hour that I take looking at stuff online. I know the North Star League especially has a very good stats database, of course, with Bookie Larson doing all that work.
Of course.
Got to give a shout out to Bookie there, because without those stats, especially for North Star League guys, I'd be a little bit lost in the headlights. And just to have that stats database, not every league has that. Some of them do, and I don't think hardly any of them are up to the statistical rigor that the North Star League is. I mean, you have average home runs, RBIs, things like that. You have ERA for pitchers. You have win-loss records, and just to have that in front of you is super important. Just to be able to talk to the people and just have stats in front of you, and just to be able to get that concrete, this guy's a really good pitcher. Oh, we can tell you he's got a 0.76 ERA on the year. He's 10-0. That shows you, he's a real good pitcher.
Right.
Not just me saying, I've seen this guy once or twice, and he really throws it good.
Yeah, that's a good point you bring up on the stats, and I'll throw that out there for you then. For the sake of all of the media that for Town Ball, anyone who's reporting on any games or doing any games, if you could get them stats in any form, just give them some info before they go in, because then they have more to talk about on the air then too.
Yep. And I mean, just our local guys, Rob LaPlante, Kip Kovar, they do a great job reporting on Town Ball, and I think just to have that, I guess, scene around you, you guys must feel good just knowing, like, oh, we have these guys that genuinely care about, what we're doing, whether it's media, whether it's, us at KRWC or NSPN. We just want to give you guys the spotlight into, how great this whole Town Ball thing is, because I'm going to be honest with you, I didn't really know too much about it. I mean, I knew we had a local team. I had my Buffalo Bulldogs, but after, I got into KRWC back in 2021, they wanted to have me do Town Ball too. And for you guys to welcome me into this Town Ball world has been nothing short of awesome. So thank you guys. It's an honor being on the podcast, by the way.
We appreciate it.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Yeah.
And you had mentioned Buffalo, and I know Delano 1A in your fields, us Wright County guys sticking together. But let's talk a little bit, more about. We'll get to Buffalo in a second, but what are your thoughts on? Now we're back to 3 classes. A lot of the leagues around the state of Minnesota are going to have teams in all 3 classes. And then what are your thoughts on what do you think the North Star League is going to look like this year?
Yeah. I think with all the shakeup, it's going to be real hard to predict. I think it's going to be. I think people are saying, oh, the Class A teams will probably be at the top, and followed by the Class B teams and the Class C teams. But even you look at when we had 2 classes last year and the year before, a B team won the combined AB, class state tournament last year. Measville won it. So it's not like it's guaranteed to be, Buffalo's Class A, so they'll win the North Star League. I mean, there's always plenty of competition. I will say the North Star League is the best Town Ball league in the state, especially if you looked at the old Class C. I thought it was the most competitive Class C league there was. I think top to bottom, there's not a whole lot much better. I mean, the Crow River Valley League also, I got to give a shout out to Delano going over there this year. That's a very competitive league. But I must say, North Star League 2-0 in the All-Star game. So we'll have to see with Delano going over to the Crow River Valley League how that changes. We'll be out at Saints Field. I probably won't be there with KRWC this year, but I'd love to be out there at Saints Field for an All-Star game.
Get you a VIP pass.
Yeah, we'll
here.
get you I'll get you a lanyard with all access. And I will say with that All-Star game, Ryan takes a lot of pride in his preparation work for that, and he will claim that he is 2-0 in the All-Star game. But with him moving over different leagues now, and I think your point on the North Star League being the best, he would have maybe agreed with you a year ago. Not anymore. Now he hates us all.
No.
Yeah, I know. What's up with that? You're a traitor now, Hayes.
Yeah, that's fine. I like to take all the shots everybody's got. But yep. I'm 2-0 running the show. I'm him when it comes to running. But here's the kicker here, JP. Maybe this brings up a unique opportunity. So Delano, we're playing in the Detroit Lakes tournament that weekend. So you won't see me at the All-Star game. If I have a Delano guy or two that's not going to make the trip up there, we'll try to get 1 or 2 guys over to Saints Field on that evening. But we've been texting back and forth about a podcast opportunity. I'll be up in Detroit Lakes with our good friend Brandon, who runs the Ligers, giving you a live report from there. You could jump in and take my spot.
Oh, yeah.
And you guys could put something together over at Saints Field.
What do you think about that? Would you ever entertain the idea of being a guest host?
I would love to be a guest host.
We need
that would
to
be a great time.
We need to test if you're actually comfortable in front of a mic first. So.
Yeah, have you,
Right, exactly. You don't know what could happen. I could, spout off and start,
yeah, we
not being professional or anything.
That's
that
right.
might be entertaining, though.
Yeah.
Who knows?
we invite all forms of entertainment for sure. I think honestly, JP, the way that you speak highly of the North Star League, obviously that's kind of your home spot. We should we might have to hire you on as a hype man eventually. I know that we're very thankful for the kind words there. But what we've learned throughout this podcast, and I'm assuming you've maybe listened to an episode or two, is we've kind of scaled up and down the state to find people that represent all the areas. I mean, is there a team or a group that outside of the North Star League, maybe even the CRVL, that you've come to appreciate, or maybe you've enjoyed their following through the tournaments?
Yeah. So I think just being able to, get to call all these teams during the state tournament is super fun. I mean, I wouldn't, give. I'm not thinking of somebody in particular right now, but it's always nice to see teams that come from super far away that basically bring their whole town. You look at like Buckman, for example, 2.5 hours away from where we were last year in Jordan, basically brought the whole town. Bluffton, things like that. Teams from, these far-flung towns here in Minnesota, towns that I had never really heard of until a couple of years ago. And I remember at the selection show one year, Ryan Hayes basically, we went through the whole bracket, and he told me where every town was, because I didn't know where some of them were.
Good geography lesson.
But doing a little geography lesson, getting to know the people from these towns, and they love that town ball is a way of life in these super small towns. I think, we have it pretty good here in Wright County, where we're not all that small towns, but
sure,
we love our town ball. Compared to these towns that have 70, 100, 300 people in them, where town ball is an event. It's like the whole town gets out, and that's their form of recreation and entertainment. It really is a truly a different level in some of these towns.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I've always, people drop a town name, and I'll be like, oh, that's over by so and so. Like, why do you know that?
How do you know that?
Because I know a lot of useless information where small towns in Minnesota are that have a town ball team. They're like, oh, well, but yeah, it came in handy that one time. I think as it usually goes for the hosts, you do fall in love with almost NCAA tournament. Like, you fall in love with a team. Like, oh gosh, they won, and they had a fun fan base. They bought a lot of beer. They're going to be back at our place next weekend, and there's definitely something to be said about picking a favorite team, every year when you're down there. And I suppose with you broadcasting, you can kind of latch onto a team like, hey, this is a fun, scrappy group. I hope they win a couple games.
Mm-hmm. And you always have to balance that with, you can't be biased on a broadcast either.
No
bias.
You have to maintain that, the air of professionalism, and be like, yes, especially, with KRWC, especially, yes, we want our Wright County teams to win, but I'm not going to be some homer. Like, I'm going to call out, what plays are, if it's a good play made by the opposition, and I'm going to try and be just that professional voice. That's my goal as a broadcaster. I'm not going to try and be, some homer or anything like that.
For sure.
Speaking of homers, you're a Buffalo guy, and they are just recently going to get moved to Class A for some reason we talked about in our first segment. It was all
for
over
reasons
the board.
I cannot understand.
Okay, well, there you go.
You'll have to listen back, JP.
Yeah.
We went we did a little deep dive, so when this comes out, you can you can listen back. But
sounds good.
Do you have, any thoughts on maybe not necessarily
A lot of it's
the
new
how and
info, yeah.
why, because it is all
Right.
new info, but how you see them adapting to Class A style of play, whether that's, do you have any thoughts on that?
I think it'll be tough because there's no draftees up in Class A. You
Good
you
point.
use your guys that you have, and that's there's a reason why they have that rule up in Class A to make sure that no teams are loading their rosters with pitchers. But I understand definitely why they have it in Class C, of course. Class B, are they going to allow draftees in Class B?
Yes.
For,
So the way it'll
okay.
work is there's Class C will stay the same in that there's 3 draftees. Class B
Yep.
will just go to 2, and then you're right with Class A, no draftees for that.
Yeah. So with Class A, I mean, it tests your pitching depth that much further. I know with Buffalo last year, they had Stepker and not a whole lot much else in terms of pitching. Yes, they had a couple of guys. Yes, I got to give a shout out to my man John Early, but it was Stepker and then a lot of solid guys, but I don't know if they're guys that can win you a Class A state tournament. So,
Right.
I think Buffalo would be a really solid contender in B, just like they were in C last year. Going to the Final Four last year, making that big run. I would have thought they would have been, a contender for the state title this year in the new Class B. But A, man, that's going to be tough. When you get teams in there like, Air Freight Unlimited, who won it 2 years ago, they got Graham Lobsher, who's, in my opinion, the best town ball pitcher in the state, had 21 strikeouts in 2 different games in the state tournament 2 years ago, and then just rolled through the state tournament last year. Couldn't pitch in the championship game because that's the second game of the day, and then Meesville just lit up Air Freight's other pitchers. But besides that, you look at some of these guys that could legitimately be single A or double A minor league players that are that good in Class A. I think it's going to be a real tough transition for Buffalo, but I think they'll adapt. I mean, you're going to have to,
Right.
just like we all are adapting this year with the classes changing. It's just changing of the guard type thing. You're going to have to adapt.
I think
It's an adapt or die situation.
I think that's maybe the best way any of us can put it is there's change everywhere, whether you're a team being changed classes or you're sticking in the same class but don't have maybe the same teams you're playing against. You have to adapt regardless of where you're at. I think you make a good point on that.
Yeah, and is Buffalo's the only North Star League team that's Class A, correct? Because
Right.
Yeah,
So
that's correct.
And yeah, Hamel I think was last year, but they'll be B now with the 3 classes. What'll be interesting is we haven't seen yet is what section they'll be placed in. There's speculation, and the best educated guess would be the one that has Monticello, Sartell, I believe Elk River, our buddies up in Hibbing, and then the 2 Moorhead teams. So how do you manage that, playing those teams now that you actually have your schedule set in stone?
Right.
What does that playoff look like? Because I do look at Buffalo and go like, well, if you do have Sefker and you can piece game 2 together, you get state tournament. Now you get 24 teams, 1 weekend game 1, 1 weekend game 2, the last weekend, or maybe 3. They could do it. They could easily be knocking on a door for Class A as well. It just and then when you get state tournament, it's all based on matchups. Yeah, you run into Air Freight game
right.
1, you might be in a little
That's
trouble.
tough.
But
Well, and I will say this, and we touched on it a little bit in our first segment, but I think for Buffalo things don't really change. It's the same schedule they have set now, regardless of where they're placed. And I know that there's a lot of people on Twitter that are making their best guesses on where they'll end up. But who knows? And I know this is an ongoing situation, so we'll just have to play it by ear like everyone else.
Yeah, and it's going to be really interesting because I thought what we had was a pretty darn good system. I think, with the changing up, going back to 3 classes, I think there might be, I think, isn't this trial for 3 years, correct? They're going to do this?
I'm not sure.
I don't think
so.
they've slapped a time on it.
Because
Okay.
we had Gary Schlepper on the state board last episode, and he said, I mean,
Year to year.
it was 1 year, and they made the decision to go to, they went down to 2 classes, and they had it for 2 years, but they made the decision, we're going back to 3 classes after the 2023 state tournament. So it could change. It could look even more different next year, and I kind of, the way things are going, I think it might.
Yeah, and it's just, I appreciate the NBA's want to get the system better, but when you continually tweak it like this, there's that lack of stability for a lot of these teams. And I know, I would say, especially with you guys, I mean, being managers and assistant managers of teams, it must be difficult for you guys just not knowing where you're going to be potentially next year and trying to work out schedules and everything like that when you got to, figure out where you're going to be positioned class-wise, who's going to be in your section, things like that. I mean, when we look at it, with KRWC or NSPN, KRWC, Kendall, mostly Kendall, but, Kendall and I just thought, oh, what are the best games? We just had North Star League. We were Class C. What's the best game this week? And, we always tried to, Kendall especially, whenever there was a game between 2 of the teams that made state the last year, that was the game we do. Because they were the top 4 from last year. And it was really sort of simple to make those calculations. It might make it a bit more difficult for KRWC, because now you got teams in 3 different classes, and just to be able to give the spotlight to every team, because we always try to make sure that we got every team in the league at least once over the course of the year. Kendall was adamant on making sure we got every team at least one time, get them a time to shine. Even Rockford and Montrose Waverly, we try to make sure, they deserve their time in the spotlight, just like Delano and Maple Lake and Buffalo and Hutch and all the good teams we have in the league. Loretto's in there too. I mean, just we try to give that spotlight to everybody.
Well, I think all the teams appreciate that. It's always fun to have radio out or whoever it may be. I do think that, it will probably be a little bit different for you guys this year, regardless of C or B or A or whatever. You'll get to learn more about some of the CVL teams that the North Star League is crossing over with now. And for Ryan with Delano in the Crow River, it's different teams that you maybe cover with them. So you'll get a wide variety, and I think, that will be different. I think it might be kind of cool for you.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think I don't know what Mr. Kubash is planning over there in terms of scheduling, but I don't know what they'll do over at KRWC, whether they'll just stick to North Star League or do some Crow River Valley as well, given that Delano is now over there. But I think it will be, fun over the course of the year to see how both leagues do, and playing some new teams. So like Delano, you guys will get like Young America, Waconia, teams like that. Waconia, the defending Class C state champions, of course, and just to be able to, play those teams on a week-to-week basis instead of, and then who's going to be in your section, Ryan? I haven't really looked at that.
So our section is made up of the B teams in the Crow River Valley. So Young America, Watertown, Plato, Carver, Green Isle, and West Tonka.
Okay, so you won't get to get mixed in back with any North Star League teams then. I was just thinking, oh, you get to play all these new teams in the regular season, and then you might have a chance to play some of your old rivals back in the playoffs. But I guess that's not
maybe in state.
Yeah, it just had to be in the state tournament.
John, you didn't pick us to go to state.
Of course,
That's why I said
we'll be
maybe.
out in Hutchinson this year for the state tournament, so another North Star League team getting to host state for the second time in 3 years, along with Brownton and Gaylord, of course. But it'll be a good time to be out in Hutch. I've never actually been out to Hutch's ballpark, so
Very
I'll
cool.
get to be out there with NSPN. It should be a great time.
No, they have a great setup. You'll really enjoy it out there, and it is nice. You stay a little more local. I mean, it probably helps that drive home isn't as long after a long day.
Yeah, but I'm out in White Bear Lake now, so it's going to be a bit
there
of
you
a
go.
trek for me. Yeah, but I'm a Buffalo guy at heart. I mean, I might have to stay with some buddies that are back out in Buffalo, but who knows? Should be a fun time out at the state tournament. It always is. I know we're all in different regions now, but where are all these regions going to be hosted this year? Because I know things are confusing.
Yeah, for the North Star League, if you look at the C side of North Star, we're hosting in Litchfield in the region, and that's the 6C. And then on the B side of the North Star, which, of course, that's where Buffalo had been, they're going to be in Watkins. So about 12, 13 miles apart for the two regions. And then Ryan.
Crow River Valley, the B teams, we will be in Watertown, and the C teams will be right down the road in New Germany.
Okay. Yeah, so, I mean, there's, 4 different sites and then 5 with Buffalo now being placed in A.
Well, and then Crow will have Waconia and St. Bonnie in A. I don't know who's hosting on that. I could see Waconia because they have a beautiful facility, but they're in with like Chaska, Chan, Shakopee, so a lot of beautiful ballparks in that area. But
there are so many beautiful ballparks across the state of Minnesota. Things that I had no idea about until I got into this wacky town ball thing a couple of years ago. Just to see the love and care that a lot of these people that are volunteers, 99% of them, put into the work in these ballparks. You look at Delano, you look at Dassel, you look at Litchfield, but you look at all these parks throughout the state. Like Jordan, like I said earlier, the amount of work that gets put into maintenance of these parks is truly extraordinary. And, shout out's got to go out to all 3 of you guys that do the work in maintaining your guys' ballparks. Just got to give a shout out to you guys.
Well, thanks. Yeah, we
you,
appreciate
JP.
that.
Well, I think that's kind of all we wanted to grill you about today. So we appreciate
I think before we really sign you off, we'll put it in verbal agreement that we'll maybe get you out to Saints Field for that All-Star game, and
absolutely, I'd love to be out there.
If we find time to throw the mics down, we'll absolutely put a little thing together for that, maybe a special edition or something like that.
Sounds good. I would love to be out there.
Awesome. We'll tentatively plan.
Well, enjoy the beautiful weekend, JP, and I'm sure you got a pile of work to do here coming up as spring sports are in swing and town ball's pretty much underway. So take some time for yourself and enjoy it, and thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me on. It's truly an honor. Thank you for having me and just considering me in the first place.
You're very welcome.
Honestly, thank you so much.
Awesome,
right,
awesome,
thanks.
JP. Well, you have a good one.
Yeah, thank you.
We'll talk to you later. Bye.
All right, we are back. Just finished up our interview with JP Daugherty of NSPN and dabbling a little bit of play-by-play for KRWC. One thing I do like about JP before we finish with our Mount Rushmore is when he does a game on the radio, he says the score like you are supposed to a lot.
Absolutely.
And he paints a picture of what is going on if the infield's in. Is the third baseman coming up?
Man. Van Gogh.
He does a good job, and there are some out there that do not. Hopefully they catch wind of this and they do a little evaluation.
Take notes.
Because there's times I've listened to a game, and I don't know the score for 3 innings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've dabbled with some local radio, and I know that's one of the first criticisms. I was told right away, John, every 2 minutes, say the score. Let us know. And I'm like, I'm like, I didn't say the score. Are you kidding me? Which brings me to my next point. We said this. We were going to do this. My name's John Anderson. I'm with Jordan Flick and Ryan Hayes. We never say our names, but we're going to start saying it so people understand you're not just listening to some random trio. We do have names. So.
Well, I mean, you are listening to a random trio.
Well, we're pretty random. We're very random. But if you're on board at this point, you probably at least know what our faces look like because we slap our little.
You can see our bobblehead-ish pictures
avatars.
So great transition into Mount Rushmore.
It's Mount Rushmore, guys. I know that the rankings of CB&A were fun, and we spent a lot of time on that. But Mount Rushmore,
we're back. We're so back. It's so fun.
Yeah.
I mean, we had a lot of fun with it to start off our podcast and our year, and we're going right back. The ideas as far as what we're able to do from a town ball podcast standpoint, we might, as we get into the season, we might tap the brakes on it. So just enjoy it while you can. We're going to continue to try to push out what we can, but we're excited to have another one today.
What is our topic for the week, for this week's Minnesota Mount Rushmore?
Okay, so this topic for this week is the Minnesota Mount Rushmore of unique, what would you say? Anything that makes a field unique. That's what we're looking for. We're drafting based off of what we feel makes a field unique, and it can be something on the playing surface, something in play, something out of play, something at the park, anything that you would, when you pull up to a park and you look at it and you go, that's different, that's cool, that's what we're drafting today. And it's been a while since we've done this.
I'm taking a look here back in the files on Twitter.
Oh, okay.
The way back. The last Mount Rushmore we did was the town ball expansion teams,
which I think was received very well.
It was a
enjoyed
fun
that.
one.
Yeah.
And we had someone even submit logos for these teams. DJ Glove Repair.
DJ Glove Repair.
He sent us some awesome logos for these teams, but we did do a vote like we always do, who won, and John, you were the winner.
Really?
With 46% of the vote, you had the Cosmos Astronauts, the Albert Lee Sky Carps, and the Grand Portage Timberjacks. You were first. Ryan, you were second. I was bringing up the rear.
Well,
wow.
I think, Jordan, you should actually technically be second because I made a major error.
Oh, no.
I had La Crescent. La Crescent does have a team, but La Crescent plays in the Wisconsin. I was going to say Minnesota. In the Minnesota State. No, they play Wisconsin Town Ball since there's a lot more teams in that area of Wisconsin closer to them.
Gotcha.
So I think I'm going to have to bow out.
Well, maybe
take the L.
Yeah,
Yep.
Maybe they can still have an expansion team, and similar to how there's the NFL and the USFL and the XFL, if that's still a thing, you can have a team from the same place in different states or different leagues.
100%. No,
I'll go second. So John will go first. Jordan will go second. Ryan, you will go third. And again, this is unique features of a ballpark. And that's it.
Whether that's, and like we said, whether that's in play, in the park, anywhere within the boundary of the park. So, I'm gonna lead off with a real doozy here. Okay. If you're if you're anywhere near central Minnesota, you're probably aware of this park, Norwood Young America. Have you guys? I'm sure you guys have been aware of this park. Mm-hmm. If you haven't seen it, you got to Google it. It's almost hard to describe. They've got this German style.
So I got Young America's town team or Norwood's town team?
Okay, so this is where you're gonna split hairs and.
Well, no. I just because it's different.
Right.
Again, like radio broadcast, we need to paint the picture for you.
Yeah. And you'll catch heat if you screw it up.
And I probably deserve some heat because here I sit and I'm not even sure which one it is. Now, Ryan, you are a CRVL guy. It's gonna be Young America. Can you confirm that?
Confirmed.
Okay,
yes.
confirm. Holy smokes! All right, it's Young America. You've got within the boundaries of the field almost a recreation of a Bavarian town, almost something you'd see near the Alps, or on the border of Switzerland, and
Yeah.
it's so wild. It's its own thing. It's nothing like it. Obviously very proud of their German heritage in that area. They even go as far as to have a town festival, and I might murder this, but Stiftungfest. Stiftungfest.
Yep.
Ryan, can you help me with this?
Well, you can make
You're a
it sound
CRBL guy.
Yeah, no, but I've been very.
You gotta say it right.
I've been very familiar with I don't think I've been to the festival. I always say and make it sound way inappropriate as Stiff Tongue Fest, but it's Stiftung Fest. So,
but they do
it's
all things German.
Yes,
all things German.
Which is
we're
mainly
talking
drinking.
What is it? Lederhosen or
Lederhosen?
Lederhosen? I'm not a German, so I can't claim to know any of this stuff. But you've got people carrying beer. You've got whatever they do.
It is odd that they're I've been there. Coached there years ago, and we're obviously going to play there on a Friday night. I think it's sold out already. It is odd to me that they're the Cardinals, the Young America Cardinals.
Yeah.
But it's just like
a very Catholic leaning thing for the old
that makes
Germans.
sense.
Yeah,
it's
maybe
like
that's
the
what it
bird
is.
cardinal, I think.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. Well, one way or another.
It's cool out there, and it sounds like they're doing some renovations to make it maybe even more colorful.
Really?
More
Well, that's really cool.
So
Bavarian-like.
they have each of these like German-esque buildings or whatever. They all hold like
serve some sort of
one is like
purpose.
concessions.
Yeah.
One is
yeah.
It's not just some facade. It's
that's
real
part of the ballpark.
building.
It's awesome.
It's crazy.
Amazing.
It's crazy. I need to get down there and I
you
need
do.
to check it out because
Yeah.
when you look at this thing on like a Google image or something, it just blows you away. It's like, who in their right mind would even think of doing something like this?
Yeah.
And they did it. So there it is, and it's amazing. So that's my first rounder. It's going to be Young America, the old Germantown recreation there, the Bavarian vibes down there.
Love it. Well, I'll go second here. Mine's not as extravagant, I guess.
And they don't have to be.
But I guess it could be extravagant depending on how they use this.
Okay.
So during the North Star League versus Crow River Valley League All-Star game last year, Waconia had hosted. Waconia's got a great park. If you ever get a chance to go there to play a game or watch a game, go. It's awesome.
They've invested a lot into that park.
Ton of time, effort, money, you name it. They have a feature of their park that I thought was super cool, and I'm starting to see more teams, while they install this feature, getting the option to do it. Their lights, they have new LED lights that you can do basically any color, any pattern. You can sync it up to music, so you can have a laser light show, as I'm calling it here, with their lights. So during the was it the seventh inning stretch that they did the seventh inning stretch, and then they did like a show with their lights, and it was awesome.
Yeah.
It was super cool. It got the fans involved, which I think is huge for town ball. Like, get your fans involved, and this is one way that they do it. And like I said, I'm seeing more and more teams and parks that are putting in these new LED lights or whatever style of lights. They have the capabilities to do it. So if you can, I'm not saying like you got to do this every game or every inning or whatever. Don't overdo it. Maybe less is more. But in an all-star game, seventh inning stretch,
so cool.
Absolutely get the laser lights going. They had it set to music.
I think we were treated to a Lee Greenwood.
Yeah.
God bless the USA, which of course a lot of red, white, and blue shooting out of those lights, and it being late June, everyone was in a pretty patriotic mood, and it was just a great time.
Yeah, we typically schedule this All-Star game now the past 2 years that we've been doing it around the 4th of July, so very fitting. But yeah, my first feature will be Waconia's Laser Light Show.
Other thing I loved about it is whoever the batter was, they put the team color
That's right.
for the uplighting.
For the
awesome.
the foot,
So
what are
when-
those called? The
Yeah, like the
uplights.
uplights.
The uplights,
The
So-
lights that, in as most layman terms as we can, you go to a baseball park with lights.
Halfway up
they
the pole.
shine. Yeah, the lights shine on the field to light the field, but then, a fly ball, you have to have lights that shine up.
Catch the bottom of the ball.
So
Yep.
the up lights created an ambiance with whatever team that All-Star was representing. Just
really
dope.
cool, like just minor detail that they didn't have to do, but because
they went all out.
they had
It was
that
awesome.
ability to do so. I mean, that was really neat.
Yeah.
All right, so interesting feature for me, and it's just kind of, it's basically a sign on the wall.
Like you said, in any capacity, this just any bit of uniqueness.
It blows me away because we have done a home and home with Chaska for probably 6-7 years now. So they'll come here this year, but last year we were down there again, and I always am just in awe because on the first base side of the grandstand, they have the water levels of the floods that have hit
Yeah.
that area. I think it's the Minnesota River that have hit that area, and I think it's one from the 60s. I mean, it would consume the entire grandstand minus the roof, and you're like standing like
Yeah.
the water would be 10 feet over my head. And they have other years, but
When
the
you-
one is just like I can't even fathom that. I know they had issues like last year too
Yep.
with them flooding.
Yep.
I don't think they were as bad as the one that's literally like
Yeah, they
5-6 feet above their concession stand.
they have
window.
the signs
Nuts.
there, and if you go to a game in Chaska, go find the sign. It's on the back of the grandstand.
First
right?
base side.
First base
It's-
side.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
go find it and just stand next to it and think about how much
Being
water
underwater
that
you
is.
would be.
And credit to their grounds crew for always
Oh my
bouncing
gosh.
back from something like that. But yeah, it's above your head. It's wild to even think about like, oh, there's a baseball field under this sea.
You mentioned that. I remember going to games in Chaska. They would host a lot of like high school regions and even high school tournaments. Even
They do
state.
that big all-star series.
Yeah, but
the
I
Lions
used to
All-Star.
watch. I had a cousin that played on a pretty good sleepy eye team in like the early 2000s, and I would go down there for, I don't know if they did state games or what. I think they
I'm
did.
Sure
I think they did.
They've hosted several times.
So JP had brought it up. He does, state tournament games for Class 3. I think it's Chaska and Jordan. do some of the
So
quarters and
they've
semis.
definitely hosted some state games, and I remember even as like a 13-year-old, the one thing I remember from that park, obviously it's a great park, but I remember that sign. It just burns a memory into my brain, and how wild it is to see how crazy that. I mean, obviously they're in an area that is very vulnerable to that sort of thing. So yeah, that's a very unique piece, and I am glad that we in Litchfield have never been 12 feet underwater. Because I don't know if we have the resources or the grounds crew to
We
get
don't
us
have enough.
back.
We don't have enough boats. That's
Yeah, absolutely. Well, good pick, Ryan. I think it's going to come back to you.
All right. Well, I'm going to go with one right down the road. New team will play this year because we're in the Crow River Valley League with them. St. Bonnie Saints Park, Missile Park. I love it because down the right field line is pretty shallow, and I did a bad job not doing my homework and getting the correct distance. But it's a short porch and right. The fence is probably a good 15, 20 feet tall, but it's, right on the other side of the fence is the road, and across the street is like a car dealership. So, I mean, if you hit one, probably not even get all of it as a lefty, just get it high enough. You'd be hitting some new and used cars across the street. And I had and you guys brought up something about all these signings we have. And I was like,
Of course.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
we do have multiple left-handed hitters. And we always kind of have joked the last few years, like, well, if we technically, we have some days we could have 7 lefties in the lineup. I always joke like, "Oh, we're gonna platoon today. Lefties pitching, all you lefties are on the bench.
Yep.
Oh, got a righties pitching, all you lefties." So, maybe hopefully our guy Jared over there in St. Bonnie throw a righty, and then we're gonna have all our lefties hit that day.
According to Google Earth here and St. Bonnie, any St. Bonnie reps, you can tell us if we're wrong. We probably are. It looks like it's about 270 down the line to right, and 285 in the gap. If you were to hit a ball, if you're gonna hit this dealership, the facing of the dealership facing the field, it's about a 370-foot poke, 375. There are parks around the state that are deeper than that. 100%. So,
well, and the thing is, you hit the highway, it'll take a good skip on you. So
for sure.
The facade of that
Everything's
building.
in play.
well, and where it lacks in distance down the right field line, it certainly does not in center field.
Makes up for in center.
Because according to Google Earth here again, it's about 420 to center. So, cool dimensions, cool feature of a park.
Mm-hmm. And they've put a lot of money and resources into their park. They did lights. They got Crown College playing there. So
that's cool.
Definitely excited to go play there and see what they continue to do.
Yeah, for sure. Jordan, you are up next with your second round pick.
Yeah, sticking with the theme here of right field walls and their distances, I gotta shout out St. Benedict, St. Ben's here.
America's team.
America's team. That's right. They are becoming my favorite team because of the America's team thing.
They've earned it.
But they have a giant, they have a monster for a right field fence, and I think it's chain link to a point and then just netting above it, and the netting. This big netting monster, it's 240 down the line and right.
A short softball field.
250 to the gap.
Oh my God.
And this netting protects the West Branch Raven Stream. So big lefties. Again, I think I said this about, I can't remember who I said this about before.
Searles, maybe?
Searles, yeah. Big lefties, if you're looking to hit home runs, go play for St. Ben's because you could crush some into that stream.
Well, the question, Jordan, if you've got a high enough fence, eventually, like the Green Monster, you got to put something into it to get it over that thing.
So I've had, long story short, I used to have this argument with State Board President Mark Forsman, who is a DC guy, about the distance of an outfield fence and what you mark it as, and it's been disputed throughout time. Well, it's 350 feet away, but we've got an 8-foot wall
to the base of the wall.
Base of the wall, but we've got an 8-foot wall. Do you mark it 358? And he was always in the camp that you do. You add the distance to the wall,
to the
and
height.
I was always like, no, it's to the fence,
Right.
And some people have 8-foot fence. If you're St. Ben's, you have a 100-foot netting or whatever this is. But I did, I looked to see, well, what does Major League Baseball do? They go to the fence, not up it.
Right.
So, but like you said, with Fenway and their monster, it's only 310 to the line and left.
Right, yeah.
And then 350 or 360 to the gap. It's a 40-foot wall or whatever it is, 50-foot wall. So, you got to poke it to get it out.
But you might be getting some easy doubles.
That's true.
Off of that, off that thing.
So St. Ben's has a unique outfield fence feature. I love that it's netting. I love that there's a stream behind it, and I love that they're America's team.
So Gary Schlepper, who we had on last week, and I know he listens a little bit. He works for Innovative Graphics, and one of his coworkers is Jeremy Heitkamp, who plays for St. Benedict. So Jordan looks like he's about a large, so send the guy a St. Benedict's America's team shirt.
Yeah, maybe XL.
XL.
I've been bulking.
He's been hitting
I've been hitting the
he's
weights.
He's not flexing right now.
I will in turn send you my love forever. So.
That's great. St. Ben's.
Yeah. Back to the top.
Back to me. All right, so this is fun. You guys are sticking to your field dimensions and this and that. I am getting away from that because this next team is actually in the North Star League. We are very familiar with this team and this park. we're going to Waverly Elementary.
Yes.
And in Waverly, Minnesota, you've got the Montrose Waverly Stingers. And let me tell you about a very unique characteristic to their field. Now, I've been playing there now for, this will be like 9 or 10 years. So we've visited, and we've been there for some away games. I think that this was a more recent addition.
Probably
to the
within
park.
the last 4 or 5 years.
4 years maybe. We show up one day, and if you know Rob Moynick, he spends a lot of time at the park. He's always looking at ways to improve it. Rob decided that he wanted to put a flower bed of tulips in his backstop.
Yes.
So
in his
play.
backstop.
In play.
Yes.
Okay. So let's paint a picture here. You've got a pass ball, and it one hops to your backstop. It's sitting in a bed of flowers, and you're gonna have to dig through it. Now, I don't remember the field rules as we were discussed.
We should note credit to Rob because he does discuss it during ground rules.
Yes, he has to.
Makes it clear and what the ruling is. I forget every time.
Well,
but
if you lose the ball in a just a pile of flowers, of course, throw the hands up. But boy, that's a rough way to lose a game.
you hope it doesn't come down to
a
loss by tulips.
The tulips can they're a blessing and a curse.
It is. I cannot think of another field in the state that has this. And if there is out there, please let us know. But it is.
There might be a reason why. I mean, I don't know.
Right.
But in terms,
it is unique. And it does make their park special.
Oh boy, you pull up, what is it, a Blazenburger? You get a Blazenburger.
We will eventually, when we do, we will eventually maybe do a whole episode on this. But they have the Blazenburger in Waverly, and they grill them to perfection.
Waverly is it's an adventure. It's a fun park. They're a fun group of guys, and they have a tulip bed for their backstop. So that is a very unique feature, and I think it needed to be
go smell the flowers and go get a Blazenburger at Waverly Elementary, or I don't know, there's different names for it, like the hive,
the nest,
they are the stinger, the
wasp's
nest, the wasp's nest.
They
can set us straight on what they would officially like it to be called, and they should. But
it's a
cool feature.
It's really, I mean, nobody's doing it like they're doing it. So shout out to the Stingers in Waverly. I am now going to my third rounder. I made fun of you guys for your field dimension takes. I am going to pick a field dimension take here. So with my third rounder, we're going to Tigertown. Tigertown, USA, Belle Plaine. I think Belle Plaine's, in terms of the coverage they've gotten, I think it's very well known what their park looks like. They've been a part of some state hosting a handful of state hosting in the last decade. And if you've been to Belle Plaine and you've been to that field, I know, God, we've dropped his name, Gary Schlepper again, but I think there was a story. He was interviewed by NSPN before, one of their hosting weekends. And Gary had a story because he was one of the few people to put a ball out over center field. And that's insane. I mean, we're talking 435 feet to center field. Not only that, you've got flagpoles that are in play.
Yes.
So you got to dodge the flagpoles as you're cruising. It blows me away.
They typically would not come into play because of how far that is. But if you do happen to have a guy that hits a ball that far, you're going to have to navigate.
Yeah. You think back to, the Astros where they had that hill in their center field.
Oh,
do you
yeah.
remember
What
this?
was the name of it? It was like, I don't know the name.
I don't either. But if you poke a ball hard enough to that center field, center fielder is going to start climbing a hill. You poke a ball hard enough in Belle Plaine, your center fielder's got to dodge, I think, 3 flagpoles out there. So it's a
Tal's Hill?
Tal's Hill, yeah.
Tal's Hill.
2015, 2016 when they renovated at what was Minute Maid, and I don't know what it is now. Dakin.
But of course, then they killed the fun and they got rid of it.
It was like 430 some feet, so very similar to Belle Plaine, where they had the warning track and then the hill out there. But yeah, this is like that.
So that's going to be my choice, my last pick, Belle Plaine, Minnesota, for their insane center field.
That's awesome.
Back to Jordan.
Back to me. So this is I'm kind of going the very opposite route when we talk about how far a fence is in relation to home plate, because this field does not have one. No fence at this field. We're taking a trip to Marty, Minnesota, Pearl Lake. The Pearl Lake Lakers, they have, instead of a fence, they have a road. So this ballpark is placed, in
An intersection.
Yep. So it is from, I should have checked the distances, but basically there is no fence to hit it over at this park. If you hit a ball on the road, on the fly, it's a home run. If you hit a ball onto the road that, bounces onto the road or rolls up to it, ground rule double. Much like the tulips at Waverly Elementary, and during ground rules, you probably got to go over that.
Yeah.
I am sure that every visiting team to Pearl Lake says, well, what happens if the ball goes on the road? And that's when the home manager can say, home run, baby, or ground rule double.
Big question. Does Pearl Lake, have they ever successfully hit a triple at that park? I mean,
I would say,
if we're talking ground rules, a home run,
a triple would be. I think it's fairly deep to center field where that road intersects. So maybe if you get one over the center fielder's head, you could stretch out a triple. But it would be hard.
Yeah.
At a field where the ball rolls to the fence, double.
Yeah.
And if you're and that probably is, topic of controversy. Someone's already rounding second and then the ball got there. Well, can't we give them the extra base?
Oh,
nope.
yeah.
Ground rule
They've
double.
got to be very upfront about that ruling.
They one thing I would like to know, because I never have been there for a game. We've had Pearl Lake out to our park and have played since I've been on the team, but are cars allowed to park maybe on the shoulder of that road for games, or is that cleared away? And if they are there, does that come into play?
I think they're county roads, so I think the answer
probably
is
can't.
no.
Yeah,
Okay.
I've never seen. I mean, you see a couple pictures here and there, and I've seen pictures of while they're playing. It looks like the road is clear. 100%.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a bunch of stories that they have about, so and so hit it into the pickup bed or the bed of a pickup truck driving by. Yeah. We never saw the ball again or whatever.
The longest hit home run in the history. You hit it in the back of a truck and it drives to Canada
forever,
or something.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you about the 7,000-foot home run. No, so if you're a Pearl Lake guy, and you have stories about that, message us, because we would like to know more about that. So that is my third and final draft pick in this Mount Rushmore.
That's a very good third rounder.
It is Pearl Lake's fenceless
field.
Yeah.
Fenceless field. All right. Ryan, you get the last pick, and you get to wrap up this Mount Rushmore.
All right. So I had a couple different routes I was going to go. I was thinking about the Jumbotrons of the Milroy Irish Field and the Hamel Hawks.
Okay.
But I'm going to go small town. A team we haven't talked about a ton, but I think a fun team. We didn't have them in our Class C predictions to make state tournament, but I think they would really boost up the attendance if they do.
Right.
And that's the Hadley Buttermakers.
Ooh.
Yep.
And cool place. Kind of the old church ball field, but unique about them, and they're not the only ones. They have the old school skin infield.
Ooh, baby.
yeah.
So that's what we're gonna end the draft with, the old skin infield in Hadley. So you really, as a shortstop, second baseman, or corner infield, really got to be smoothing it out with your spikes. I don't know. I don't know if they do a redrag every couple innings.
You know,
or-
that's
Like a
that's good
Zamboni
question.
type deal.
Yeah.
It's
in the
funny.
third, sixth, and I don't know.
It's funny how
Third and
topical
sixth.
this is. I watched a Japanese baseball game last night, and they are known for their darker soil, but they have that skin infield. They never. It's like they've decided to just skip that part
That's
of
what we're
baseball.
doing,
They're
yeah.
like, we are not gonna manicure an infield, a grass
The
infield.
thing is we've run into it a lot. You get in the dog days of July where it doesn't rain for 30 days.
My gosh.
Sometimes having that grass infield ain't that great. Or all of a
What?
sudden you're playing. What do you mean?
Imagine the dust storm of a of a skinned
Well,
infield.
that's what that grass infield turns into.
That's
sometimes.
what it turns
I
into.
get that.
But here's the thing. Here's the thing, John. You get into July, you can't run your sprinklers enough to keep the dust down on the grass.
Right.
It doesn't eat it up enough.
Well,
But
and
you
you
could
have to, and this is taking tips from my brother, the turf guy here, but you have to water at certain times of the day, or early
Right,
morning, or at
right.
night, because you don't want it to be hitting on it, during the day when the sun's beating on it, and then you're
you're
just
losing
burning it.
half
But-
the water.
yeah,
So,
so
yes, it could be a dust storm, but I think you hit that with a sprinkler real quick.
Sure.
You should
Yeah.
be okay for a little bit. You probably hit that even almost in the middle of the game too, whereas you're not doing that with
Right,
grass.
right.
But,
Right.
So
Yeah, I've played on my fair share of skin infields. I respect the heck out of that, and I'm sure it causes its own little challenges too. So
Yeah.
credit to their field maintenance workers.
Ryan, Hollywood softball complex, is that grass or skin
all the
infield?
skin and
Okay, just double check.
it's all dirt. Off air, I'll tell you a great Chad Raish, former manager of the Maple Lake Lakers story.
Oh,
about
wow.
skin
Cannot
infield.
wait.
And apparently not PG-13.
Nope.
Well,
Fun
I think that does it for our Mount Rushmore, and we'll kind of wrap things up here. We covered a lot today. This is probably one of our longer ones. So
That Buffalo thing, obviously, still kind of an active investigation or whatever they want to call it, but
Yeah.
it's fluid, and we'll keep you in the loop on it. Had a fun time with JP.
Yep.
A really good guy that we were lucky to. He kind of hitched his wagon to North Star League baseball, and now he's kind of branching out a little bit with the NSPN. So if you ever come across JP, tell him hi, and he's a good kid, and he's a fun guy to be around for sure.
absolutely. Well, I think that wraps it up. So until next time,
That's talking town ball.
let's talk about.